What is the weirdest thing a babysitter or caretaker has ever done to you? I had a babysitter who would try to hit me, but she was 60 or so she moved rather slowly compared to 8 or 9-year-old me, so she rarely ever landed a slap. She would usually hit me for pointing out that she was wrong or me talking back to her. One night she tried to hit me, so I ran upstairs to my parents' room where we kept our dog because she was terrified of dogs. I released the dog, breed American Eskimo, and shouted, "I've released the hound." The dog ran downstairs and, having never met her before, barked at her. This babysitter ran outside barefoot into the snow, ran down the driveway, through the street, and to the neighbor's house across the street. Called my parents and said she was never babysitting me again. I was like 6 years old, and our family had gotten a Nintendo Entertainment System. I basically only played a couple of games, nothing very intense or interesting. Things like Super Mario, Duck Hunt, Mickey Mousecapades, Yoshi, Cookie, etc. Kiddie games. We had tons of games though, because my cousins gave them to us used. My babysitter was this really responsible, neat Asian college student. He saw the game collection and immediately got excited about seeing Final Fantasy in there and asked me if I minded if he played it while he babysat me. I told him go ahead, and I was kind of blown away. Well, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe just seeing an adult get really excited about a video game. But it was a major turning point in my life. Became a pretty serious RPG/sci-fi/fantasy/anime nerd over time. TLDR, babysitter turned me into a nerd. Made me love Final Fantasy. Kupo, my old daycare lady's daughter, made me make out with her once. She just randomly woke me up from a nap early, and when I went to go play, she pinned me against a wall and tried cramming her tongue into my mouth. I resisted as much as I could, but it was inevitable. Oh, and did I mention that I'm a chick? That same girl also choked me because I was invited into her fort by my sister, but she didn't want me in there, so she pinned me to the ground and held my throat. Bitches be whack. She was in high school and I was in elementary school. She would watch me and my younger sister most days after school before my parents would come home. She was alright to us. I remember she was very lazy. She would sleep on the couch for hours while we would play around the house or neighborhood. What made her terrible is she started stealing from us. She found my dad's checkbook and forged some checks. My dad is in finance and always balances the checkbook, and it was obvious that money was missing. He got in touch with the bank and found out that it was her. Also, my parents would hold on to my and my sister's cash that wasn't in the bank. Like maybe $120 total, and that mysteriously went missing, but they couldn't prove she took it. My parents didn't call the police because they didn't want to ruin her life, and also her parents were very nice. They paid back the money she took, and I never spoke to her again. I actually looked her up on Facebook, and she has 3 daughters now. I wonder if she ever thinks about how much she betrayed our trust. Genuine story, 30-ish years ago, my father was in the British Merchant Navy, and my mother would sometimes come along, working the bar, kitchen, whatever. At the time, I was just a baby, and they had a chance for some shore leave together, but needed a sitter. The first mate volunteered to take the duty, and he was a Scottish lad with a strong desire for a drink just about every night. Playing to stereotypes, but it's true. But he took his sitting duty seriously and didn't touch a drop whilst looking after little me. Upon my parents' return, they found him looking after me safe and sound. Being bottle-fed just a small touch of whiskey to help me get to sleep. I don't think my parents were even angry, just amused. But my dad has some great stories from when he was in the Navy, as I suppose every sailor does, and this one is quite sedate in comparison. These 2 sisters that used to watch me and my siblings would put Tabasco sauce on our lips and tongues when we were bad. They would also force us to take naps by putting us in our bedrooms, locking the door, and turning off the lights. I was 5 and my parents never made us take naps at that age. For some reason, I only ever complained about the nap thing, not the Tabasco thing. If I saw them on the street, I called them the girls who make us take naps. What the fuck? I should have told my parents about the hot pepper sauce torture. Luckily, they were backup babysitters who only came to the house a handful of times. Our other sitters were like family. They were really lovely girls. My babysitter was my cousin, and she would kind of let me do whatever while she watched Maury. This was the 90s. I would do things like eat condiments straight because I figured since they were so good on food, they'd be good by themselves. I remember eating a spoonful of salt, a few spoons of butter, and about a fifth of a jar of mayo. Then my stomach hurt and I took a nap on the welcome mat. In other aspects, she was awesome. She once made Rice Krispie treats and woke me up for some at 11 at night so I wouldn't miss out. My family wouldn't let me use the bathroom by myself until I was a preteen, and found out this wasn't common and threatened to start asking non-family about it, and not even all the time after that. I liked my first apartment very much, because it had a bathroom door, with a lock and everything. If I have any kids of my own, I think I'll do my best to make sure they have a bathroom connected to their bedroom, once they're at a responsible age for it, of course, so I don't even give myself the chance to do this. 2 babysitters left me with physical scars. I was playing NES with my babysitter, who has Downs, and after having scored a touchdown, point, killed her, whatever it was, I was dancing around until she put her hand on the back of my head, then slammed my mouth into the console. Split lip for life. Another babysitter played a game where she closes my eyes and tells me where to go. She had me run headlong into a table. At the time, my eyebrow and the table were on the same level. Split eyebrow for life. Oh boy. This is gonna get buried, but I have been waiting a long time to tell this story. When I was 6 or so, my parents were divorced, so they relied on getting babysitters quite often for us. One young lady stands out in my memory like it was yesterday. She was kind of goth, which is a red flag right off the bat. Great work, Mom and Dad. And one day she decides it would be a great idea to pretend to have a dark ritual on me, so she forcefully holds me down and demands that my older sister get the largest knife she could find. So I'm squirming and screaming on the floor as my sister slowly walks toward me, holding the butcher's knife in both hands. The babysitter refuses to let me up and is pinning all of my limbs down. I couldn't have weighed more than 50 pounds, so I couldn't have put up much of a fight. Needless to say, I was scared shitless. She then instructs my sister to make the first cut. My earth-shattering screams must have finally gotten through the babysitter's head, because it was only at this point that she finally let me up. 'Twas a bad day. My favorite babysitter of all time was the daycare lady who had 20 kids playing in her living room 9 to 5. My parents said, "We'll be gone 3 months." They actually died. Mrs. Mayer took care of all 3 of us 24/7 as if we were her own for a year before we were placed. I know she is departed. I should have deep regrets that I didn't mature enough to tell her how much we appreciated it. She didn't do it for our immature thanks. She did it because she was good at doing the right thing. Thank you. Not completely relevant, but here it goes. When I was a kid, my friend's older sister used to babysit my sister and I when our parents were out. One night, there was a knocking on the door. We looked out the window to see our neighbor's wife standing in the driveway. When the sitter opened the door, she was greeted by the scariest mask you'd ever seen screaming her in the face. Our sitter retorted by screaming at the top of her lungs and slamming the door on him. Turned out, that was our neighbor. He owned a toy/random stuff store around the corner and had brought us all bags of candy and small toys from the store. Needless to say, we were all scared shitless, but the candy helped. That may have also been the last time she babysitted us. When I was a kid, no shit, who babysits adults, my parents had rented a movie about a magician for us to watch while they were gone. Turns out someone put the wrong VHS in the case. Back in the day, this used to happen quite often, and you'd have to make sure you had the right one before leaving the video store. Well, it wasn't just a random movie film they put in the place of the family story we were supposed to see. It was Candyman, the horror flick. What did our babysitter do? Nothing. She let it play, watched it with us until we couldn't take it anymore, 45 minutes in, and I asked her to stop it. I guess she didn't want to contradict my parents' apparent movie pick, not realizing it was a blatant mistake. I especially remember a scene where a boy gets his dick cut off in the bathroom. As a 7-year-old, this kind of stuff gets to you. I was scared to be alone in the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror after that. Needless to say, I never saw that babysitter again after this event. My friend and I were staying at my house for a night while our parents all went to dinner or something together. We had a babysitter watching us who was the older sister of one of the kids in our grade. We were being horrible kids, boys, and annoying the shit out of her by refusing to do anything she said. She made us go into our downstairs bathroom, which was probably 3.5 feet of walking space wide from counter to opposite wall, and maybe 9 or 10 feet deep. Then she pulled the door closed behind her, so we couldn't fight around her and run off laughing. Happened once already. The problem was, the doorknob was broken and pulled away from the other side's knob when she pulled it closed, just after it clicked. So we were stuck in there until our parents came home to let us out. She was embarrassed and at the end of her rope, just unable to believe how frustrating the whole night was. Of course, we bugged her the whole time, saying, "I can't believe you locked us in here, Bonnie. Oh my god!" So she tried to give us a stern talking to and then leave us in timeout in the bathroom, but ended up locking herself in the bathroom with us. When I was like 4, my parents went to a dinner party at a friend's house and they left me with the babysitter. She had been working and living in the same house since I was born. While they were at the dinner party, my mom started getting this really bad vibe, so she told my dad they had to leave. Just as they were getting to the house, the babysitter was getting into a cab. Her boyfriend was a taxi driver. And she was taking me. My mom immediately got off the car and ran toward the babysitter, took me from her arms, and slapped the shit out of her. My dad parked the car so the other guy couldn't get away. We lived in a dead-end street that was pretty narrow. He got off the car, opened the taxi door, pulled out the guy, and threw him to the ground. After checking the car, they found a bag full of my clothes and another bag full of the babysitter's clothes. I'm not sure what happened after, I just know that neither the babysitter nor her boyfriend ever came back or were seen around the area. Of course, I don't remember all the details, I just have some vague images and sounds, but my mom and dad have told me and my family the story hundreds of times. TLDR, my babysitter and her boyfriend tried to kidnap me. My mom and dad got there just in time, beat the shit out of them, and they were never seen again. Every babysitter I had growing up was an older stay-at-home mom, and each one turned out to be a huge bitch with horrible babysitting skills. One woman babysat 10 to 15 kids every day while parents were working. Her policy was that she would feed us lunch at 11:30, and then we were to go outside and play till our parents came to get us, 5, 6, 7 hours later. I was about 4 or 5 then, and remember one time having to go to the bathroom, but, absolutely no going inside after lunchtime. I walked all the way back to my apartment, accidentally pissing myself when I got there. Our very nice elderly Korean neighbor found me, took me in, and gave me a change of clothes from her grandson, and let me stay there eating snacks till my parents came home. Babysitter number 2 was dirt poor and had a daughter my age she mostly neglected, unless she was verbally/mentally abusing her. I have a vivid memory of her leaving the two of us one day, and we were really hungry, so we tried to cook the only food item we could find, a hot dog, over a radiator vent. My other vivid memory of her was the time she started calling her daughter fat, and then grabbed a large butcher knife and a chunk of her daughter's stomach fat and yelled that she was going to cut it all off. I have no idea how her daughter turned out, but I really hope she was one day able to get the counseling she undoubtedly needed. Babysitter number 3 had a son a few years younger than me, who was still in the napping phase. I made a mistake one day by telling him I didn't take naps and then went out to play. When I came back, she was livid and started yelling about how I fucked everything up. Now her son won't sleep, etc. And then demanded I go lie to him about how I actually did take naps and that if I didn't get him to sleep, then I could never come back. I became a latchkey kid at 8 and never looked back. I had a babysitter before kindergarten who decided she wanted to give me and my younger brother a bath for some reason, which she shouldn't have been doing. She sat him under the faucet and turned the water on super hot, apparently. I don't know if this really happened, but I remember her pouring something into the water, and I have it in my head that it was bleach. I don't know if it was. Meanwhile, my mother tried to call the house and couldn't get an answer, so she decided to leave work early. She didn't tell the babysitter this. When she got home, Mom said it looked like the girl was getting ready to leave us there by ourselves. My brother had to go to the ER with second-degree burns. Of course, social services had to intensely question my parents. Forced me to play frustration. My mom hired her to sort out my younger brothers and sister. They were all very mischievous, and it worked wonders. I was 17 at the time, and my mother was generally laid back about me being a computer nerd at every hour of the day. I spent a lot of time in my room playing games and talking to friends. One day, this woman comes into my room and goes, "Do you want to play frustration with us?" It's kind of my fault, really, but I said yes to her offer and quickly got very bored with the game. I asked if I could leave. She said no, so I deliberately hurt my finger and started being in pain. She said, "Go and put it under the cold tap," without even blinking an eyelid. So I went back upstairs, into my room, and didn't speak to her for the rest of the day. Fucking frustration. You know how much of a cunt that game is? I had awesome sitters when I was a kid. However, eventually I ended up as a sitter for a lady that lived up the street from me. Let's call her Jenny. Jenny was, well, I'll not beat around the bush, she was a MILF. And an awesome drunk. Still never quite sure if she always was or wasn't drunk. She had gone through a divorce about 2 years prior, got a very large amount of cash from her ex-husband, and had twins to take care of. While going out, Jenny needed a sitter. My parents knew her, and I needed some extra cash. So after a few times babysitting the twins, these kids were rotten, by the way, Jenny called me again and asked if I could watch her twins a few more times. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, I didn't have sex with her that time, but let me finish my story. Once I came over, Jenny said the twins are already asleep in her bed. Their crackers were by the nightstand, and their favorite movie was still in the VCR. All I needed to do was make sure they stayed asleep and rewind the movie for them in case they woke up. I said, okay, and Jenny took off. About half an hour into just watching TV, just outside her room where the twins were, I decided to rewind the tape. Turns out Jenny had left a porno in the VCR. A little shocked at first, I went ahead and let it rewind, and then took it out and left it in the drawer where the kids couldn't reach. Then I went to the bedroom where the kids were sleeping, checked for the crackers in the nightstand, and didn't see them, so I opened the stand. What do you know? There was a dildo, vanilla-flavored lube, 4 condoms, and some other miscellaneous toys. No crackers. After about 2 hours, Jenny came back. First thing she asked was, "Find everything okay?" Only response I could think of in time was, "Yep." Thinking back to that day, I guess there was a reason she paid me $100 an hour. That, or she just liked messing with people and spending her ex's money. Either way, I made a serious amount of cash over the next few weeks. I had a babysitter who pretended he was dead. He just was laying, sprawled on the floor. 8-year-old me and my 6-year-old brother were both in hysterics before he got up and yelled, "Gotcha!" And then my brother and I cried until our parents got home 3 hours later. My babysitter would always complete my Rubik's Cube for me. I'd mess it up again, and she'd just complete it again. I don't think I belong on this thread. My neighbor made me wear a leash. Her kid was out of control, and we had to go to the grocery store. She pulled a leash out of her purse and hooked a Velcro wristband around his arm. Before I had a chance to make fun of him, she pulled out another one and hooked it to me. I walked around patiently, hoping to be released on good behavior, but no luck. Also, the rule in the car was hands under the seatbelt, which was terribly uncomfortable and dangerous too.